Greetings. Today's presentation is on the power of feedback, faculty support, and clear expectations. My name is Maureen Dunn, and I am the assistant teaching professor for the RN to BSN program at Penn State Shenango.
Hey, good morning. My name is Roxanne Atterholt. I'm glad to be with you today, and I am a program coordinator and associate teaching professor in human development family studies at Penn State Shenango.
So these are our objectives that we wish to cover for this presentation. And just to give you a little bit of background, effective feedback is looking at how learners use to make sense of their performance. And it's also utilized to improve the quality of their performance and their learning strategies. However, the time and effort that faculty put into providing feedback, many students make limited use of this feedback. And sometimes students are not required to take an active role in this feedback process. So what we're looking at today, Roxanne and I, is looking at how we can provide feedback and how the student plays an active role in this process and is basically the center of the feedback process. So at our campus at Penn State Shenango, we have a very high percentage of first generation students that are at our campus at 37%. So this is why Roxanne and I are so strongly opinionated, or how do you want to say, geared toward making sure that we work with our students. So as part of effective feedback, responsive faculty, and clear rubrics, this can help the first generation student overcome these unique challenges noted above. And the goal, of course, is to have them achieve academic success. Next slide. So when you're giving feedback, there's a couple different terms that through our research that we have found. So there's effective feedback, critical feedback, and constructive criticism. As we have said before, feedback is really important because it provides for areas of growth and guidance. And it is essential for the student to have effective feedback because it clears up any misconceptions, supports student growth, and build self-assessment skills. Despite the benefit of feedback, it can be perceived as a threat or harm to the student-teacher relationship. Because when their trust is missing or the intentions behind the feedback aren't clear, the way the instructor interacts or engages with the student and delivers feedback can affect that student's motivation. So students through the research has provided some different experiences or thoughts that they had when they receive feedback. And so when they reflect on the feedback process, students have noticed, of course, first thing is the minuses that they get on their feedback, or the points deducted from their feedback. And that initially triggers a negative response. Any feedback that is negative, the students have stated that it stings, or they think, oh, I'm not good enough for this class. And ways to help with the students with this so that they don't feel that way is knowing that that they can come to you directly with questions, or sometimes even them having to work in groups or individually kind of helps with that feedback process. Also, another component that students have is that the relationship what they have with their instructor. And if they feel that their instructor is supportive and approachable and are comfortable asking questions and have motivation to meaningfully engage in that feedback. So the better relationship you have with your students, the better experience the student has with the feedback. And of course, this feedback or experiences or engagement looks very different from student to student. And if the student has a strong relationship with that faculty member, they're less likely to feel offended when they get that feedback. And then actions taken to in response to the feedback. So say the student submits an assignment late, and they were let me backtrack here a minute. Students who were given time in class to review their feedback, they utilized it in different ways. One of the things that I found when I was giving students feedback, or how I do my classes now, is I provide the students time within the classroom to start working on their assignments, or we go over their assignments that they've gotten feedback on in class, so that they have that physical one-to-one interaction with me, and we can discuss my thought process and what their thought process was on the information that they received. So looking at feedback and looking at timeliness, we found that students do not always take up feedback in meaningful ways. And this could be due to the fact that they do not submit their work on time to receive their feedback. They don't want to look at it. They don't want to pick up on it. And they don't value the feedback. They only value the grade. So the other challenges too with the timeliness is that faculty may have high workloads. You know, a lot of us, or some of us, may have over 80 students in our class, and it's just easier to not provide as much feedback. And the faculty feel that if the students have a question, which is not always the case, that they're going to approach them. So those are some of the reasons why timeliness is important as well. And then the last concept to talk about is what is called the feedback loop. Each of these questions represent a key dimension in the feedback loop. Where am I going? How am I going? And where to next? Of course, where am I going, as we all do, is we provide our learning objectives for each of the different lessons. How am I going, or where to next, is the next question we ask, where the student understands how they are currently performing. And as faculty, we use this in many different ways. We might use it in different assessment methods, different teaching methods, and different feedback methods. And it can come from anyone. It can come from a teacher, a tutor, a peer, themselves doing self-assessment, someone they work with, a patient, or a colleague. The goal is to use this feedback to guide the student in the next steps in learning. And then the last question, which I really like about this, is where to next. This is where we provide feedback to improve and grow. So instead of looking at a person's past mistakes, feed forward, or where to next focuses on what specific actions a student can take to get better and to reach their goals. It helps to close that loop. So for example, think of it as a coach of giving tips for the next game rather than reviewing what went wrong in the last one. So Roxanne is now going to be talking about the next component of our presentation.
Yep, thanks, Maureen. I want to start by sharing that I myself am a first-gen student. As the youngest of 5, I did have the benefit of trailblazing siblings to pave the way a little bit. But now I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the role of rubrics and clear rubrics in assessment. So the traditional definition of rubric actually comes from a Latin word called rubrica, which means red, and it referred to the red ink that was used for official headings in medieval manuscripts. So in essence, the red ink brought attention and importance to certain parts of the document. Well, we now know that rubrics are commonly defined as tools that outline the criteria and performance expectations for assignments. So when we think about designing effective rubrics, we know that despite these benefits of rubrics, that rubrics can also restrict learning and potentially contribute to inequitable teaching practices. So poorly designed rubrics include those with maybe ineffective scales or very generic or generalized criteria or vague or negative language. So when we are designing rubrics, we want to include specific criteria that align with the learning objectives. So these can provide a consistent and objective framework for us evaluating our student performance and also providing that meaningful feedback that Maureen talked about. So effective rubrics typically include the following components, and those are things like task description, those performance criteria, scale of achievement levels, and detailed descriptors for each level. They also provide actionable feedback that students can use to improve their future performance. So what are the benefits for students? Well, particularly, we're talking today about first-gen students, but we would argue that this is for all students. But first-gen students frequently encounter obstacles due to things like unclear course expectations or even disorganized materials. So by us implementing clear rubrics, we can address these issues by explicitly outlining the assignment criteria, and we can, in essence, reduce that ambiguity and enhance student confidence. So this can help our students self-assess their work, to help them identify areas for improvement and really to take ownership for their own learning. So what we are suggesting based on the literature is an integrative approach. And this type of approach combines effective feedback, our faculty responsiveness, and those clear rubrics to support a learning environment for those first-gen students that can reduce that uncertainty to hopefully increase their engagement and while also promoting academic confidence. Pretty good stuff, I would suggest. So first-gen students often face unique challenges and things like being unfamiliar with academic expectations or limited access to family guidance on navigating college. So by us providing detailed, constructive feedback, this helps students understand their strengths as well as their areas for improvement. While that timely faculty interactions that Maureen talked about, that increases their and creates a sense of belonging and support. So clear rubrics, what they do is they further enhance that environment by outlining those expectations, that ambiguity goes down, and it really promotes fairness in grading. When people feel like things are fair, that can alleviate their anxiety and really build their self-efficacy. So the research has indicated that these transparent teaching practices and simple things like including structured feedback and well-defined criteria really help students be motivated, helps them persist, and in general, it helps their overall success. All very good outcomes. So as we wind down our presentation, we offer a few implementation suggestions to help first gen and all students feel equipped to succeed. So a few of these suggestions include that we could use low stakes assignments with formative feedback before we hit those major assessments. So things like draft submissions for essays or practice quizzes. You could also provide actionable next steps. That might sound something like your thesis is clear, but adding more examples will strengthen your argument. Another suggestion is to set clear expectations for our response times. Things like on your syllabus, emails will be answered within 24 hours on weekdays. You could acknowledge student effort and their progress, right? So by recognizing their improvements, by referencing previous work, that's a great strategy. So for example, you could say, this revision shows clearer organization. Great job applying the feedback. Another is to personalize your encouragement, especially for those struggling students, really just to personalize it to them. And this reinforces that, you know what, progress is possible. And so another suggestion is to provide exemplars, those examples, right? This is maybe from a previous semester, someone's work that really just knocked it out of the ballpark. So by providing an example, you support their success by offering clear models of expectations. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but when I see something, it makes it easier for me to create my own. and really increases confidence in their ability to complete the task successfully. And lastly, we can regularly review and refine our rubrics as faculty. So we do this based on those common questions that come up, or where you see the sticky points or the muddy points or those performance trends that you are noticing. You just kind of refine things a little bit. So when we adjust rubrics to address frequent areas of confusion or patterns, we can create a more transparent and supportive assessment process. So these are Maureen and I's references where we built today's presentation from. If you would like more information, we certainly would send you to those. And we finally want to share our contact information. We'd love to continue the conversation with you and learn from you as well as with you. So feel free to reach out if we can help. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.